Before Ronaldinho and Neymar wowed the footballing world with their crazy dribbling moves, there was Jay Okocha. Jay Okocha came through in an era where it was unthinkable to attempt any moves that were considered unorthodox, and he proved to the world that you can play at the highest level of football and still have fun. He brought street football onto professional pitches where he would use and popularize countless different moves, like the Okocha step over, where he would roll the ball one way and then fake with his other foot to move the ball in the opposite direction, but he would instead step over the ball and move in the same way. And also the rainbow flick, where he would simply flick the ball over his defender's head with his back heel to make his opponents look stupid. So what inspired him to use these risky moves in real matches? Well, we first have to go back and look at his upbringing to understand why he played the way he did. Jay Okocha grew up in Nigeria, where at a young age he would lack opportunities to play in an academy and get taught by coaches. So he would play with makeshift balls out on the street any chance he could, because he loved playing football. But for Okocha, it turned out not playing in academy was the best thing that could ever happen to him, because it was out in these streets that he would learn to play tricks on opponents and develop his unique playing style. Which, if he had played in an academy, he would have almost surely not been able to do this, because his playing style would be considered ineffective and wasteful. He would continue to play out in the streets until he turned 17, where he would join his local professional club, Enugu Rangers, and here he would immediately show off his talent, as he would score against future Nigerian international Willie Okpara shortly after joining the club. After a couple of months of playing for the Enugu Rangers, he would travel to watch his friend Binebi Numa play in the third tier of German football for a team called Borussia Neunkirchen. Okocha would one day tag along with Numa to training, and here he would ask the manager if he could try out for the team, but the manager at first told him he might not be able to cope with the competition. But Okocha assured the manager that he was capable, and after the tryout, the rest was history, as the manager was so impressed that he offered him a contract just a day later. He would play at Borussia Neunkirchen for 2 years, where he would show off his one-of-a-kind playing style in a professional European setting, and he would score 7 goals in 35 games until he left the club for a team in the second tier of German league, FC Saarbrücken. However, he would only play at Saarbrücken for a couple of months until he made another move up, this time to Eintracht Frankfurt. At Eintracht Frankfurt, he would team up with another well-known African player in Tony Yeboah, and here he would continue entertaining crowds with his tricks. And he would also score one of the most coldest goals of all time in a match against Karlsruher SC, where he would simply toy with their goalkeeper in defense to score a nasty goal. And who was their goalkeeper, you might ask? Well, it was none other than the legend Oliver Kahn. 2 years after joining Frankfurt, Okocha would get a chance to represent his country in the African Cup of Nations in 1994. And in this tournament, he would torment and pick apart defenses in the tournament, as he made the team of the tournament while helping Nigeria win their second ever AFCON. A couple of months after the AFCON win, Okocha would participate in another international tournament, this time the 1994 World Cup, as Nigeria made their first ever appearance in the World Cup. Okocha would produce some. The conclusion of the group stages saw Nigeria make it through the group stages, as they finished top of the group with 6 points, and the first opponent they would be taking on in the knockout round was Italy. The game would see Nigeria take an early lead as they scored in the 25th minute, and it looked like the game was heading to a Nigeria win until Baggio scored 2 minutes before stoppage time to level the playing field and to force the game into extra time. And in extra time, Baggio would put the game away with a 102nd minute penalty to knock Nigeria out of the tournament. Back in the Bundesliga though, Okocha wouldn't be happy even with all his accomplishments, as he would reveal he dealt with racism at his time in Germany, and he also got in a feud with the manager Jupp Heynckes. All of this would culminate in him leaving Frankfurt after they got relegated in 1995 for Fenerbahce, as they paid €1 million to sign him. In Fenerbahce, Okocha proved everyone who thought he had no end product wrong, as he would completely evolve his game to become a dangerous goal threat, with him becoming one of the deadliest set-piece takers on the planet, to become an all-around player. By the end of year 2 in Fenerbahce, Okocha had shown he was ready for a big step up in competition, as he scored 30 goals and 16 assists in 62 matches in his time at Fenerbahce. This performance convinced French giants PSG to make a move for Okocha, as they signed him from Fenerbahce for €14 million, which made him not only one of the most expensive players in the world, but also the most expensive African player of all time. At PSG, he would immediately show what he was about, as he scored a goal in his debut game just 1 minute after getting subbed on, as he scored an absolute screamer, which would be unusually similar to Ronaldinho's debut goal at Barca just 5 years later. Unfortunately for Okocha, he would struggle to win trophies for PSG, but he would help the team out in other ways when a young wonder kid from Brazil called Ronaldinho joined the club. Okocha would mentor Ronaldinho and help him realize he could play with freedom and express himself even in the big football stages of Europe, just like Okocha himself did. And he also taught him a couple of tricks, as years later he would say, "Ronaldinho tried to imitate some of my skills and dribbles. He was still a young player before I left for England and he left for Barca." It's also quite clear that Ronaldinho himself admired Okocha, as even years later Ronaldinho would tweet Okocha was one of the few number 10s he actually admired. But this mentorship between Okocha and Ronaldinho would only last 1 year, as just a year after Ronaldinho joined PSG, Okocha would shock everyone and join the Premier League side Bolton Wanderers. Okocha would be coming into a Premier League that was known for being rigid and preferring direct football at this time, but Okocha would still attempt tricks that were only seen in parks, not in professional pitches in England. His swagger on the ball and the way he made his defenders look silly was inspiring to fans of not only Bolton, but fans across the Premier League, as his style was a breath of fresh air from the usual way of playing. Okocha's fearlessness on the ball, with his tendency to attempt tricks even in his own penalty area, just showed how Okocha perfectly embodied the saying, "Streets will never forget." While Okocha suffered with injuries in his first season, he had already become a Bolton favorite within the fans in the short time that he did play, and they even made a chant for him, saying, "JJ so good, they named him twice." When he was playing for Bolton in his first season, he produced some highlight-worthy moments, like in a match against West Ham when Bolton were in a relegation race, where Okocha ran all the way from the halfway line, somehow staying on his feet after a tackle attempt and scoring a screamer outside the box, which earned Bolton an important 1-0 win. Another iconic moment came when late in the game against Arsenal, where Arsenal and Bolton were tied up. As Bolton were trying to hold on to a draw, Okocha had received the ball next to the corner, and Okocha would still attempt and succeed in his rainbow flick over Ray Parlour. And this moment described Okocha perfectly, because most players would play it safe and hold on to the ball and let the time run. But Okocha wasn't like that, and he wanted to have fun, and he was going to take risks in process. Okocha's contributions to the team would prove to be vital, as his 7 goals in 31 games helped Bolton narrowly escape relegation, with them finishing 2 points ahead of relegated West Ham. And this is kind of crazy to think about, but if Okocha didn't score that screamer against West Ham in that 1-0 victory, it would be Bolton instead of West Ham that was getting relegated. In the next season, Okocha would have a chance at a trophy, with Bolton making a deep run in the League Cup as they reached the semi-finals to play Aston Villa. Okocha would do the unthinkable in this game, as he first scored a free kick in the 2nd minute to put Bolton up 1-0, but he somehow won-upped that as he scored a free kick again, this time from the edge of the outside the box with outside of his right foot, and this game ended up finishing 5-2 as Bolton survived the second leg to move on to the finals. Unfortunately for Okocha, Bolton would lose in a close game against Middlesbrough in 2-1 loss, but this season would still be positive as Bolton finished comfortably above the relegation race this season, finishing 8th with 53 points. Okocha would continue to inspire fans across the country over his next 3 seasons as he continued to perform flashy skill moves to create space for him and his teammates, as he helped Bolton place 6th, 8th, and 7th, with Bolton even qualifying for the Europa League once. After those 3 seasons, his Bolton career came to an end, and by the end, he had won 2 BBC African Player of the Year awards and 4 consecutive Nigeria Player of the Year awards, with him also picking up an AFCON Best Player of the Tournament in 2004. After his Bolton career ended, he spent a year in Qatar before finishing his career in Hull City, where he would struggle to stay on the pitch as injuries would strike. Having said all that, while Okocha might not have scored the most goals or won the most trophies, it is clear that he is one of the most influential dribblers ever, because he isn't remembered for the pure numbers that he produced, but rather the way he brought fearlessness and uniqueness to the football in the biggest stages. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any suggestions about a player, idea, team I can make my next video on, leave them down in the comments below. I might just do them and I'll give you guys a shout out.